everyone. Welcome to this week's Invisible Not Broken. This is Monica Michelle with Explicitly Sick. I am really hoping you're going to enjoy this interview as much as I enjoyed having it. I do want to just put out some trigger warnings. We do discuss eating disorders, self-harm, suicidal thoughts. This is mostly an interview about anorexia. We touch on some very, touchy subjects. If you go to our show notes, I have all of the different places you can call or text to get help that I can find. If you have some other ones that you think are better than what I found, please go ahead and put a comment at the bottom and I will add those to our show notes. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy. We do also discuss some really cool things like robotics, the perfectionism as safety. We get into a whole bunch, and we're going to hopefully have Amy back next month to discuss some other things about disability. I hope you enjoyed the interview. Thank you so much for listening. Please share this with friends, family, and your online community.
How are you?
I am really excited to talk to you. I just read through your what you had written about your thesis.
Oh, okay.
On robotics, and I'm kind of nerding out right now, so I'll try to stay on topic, but I was curious if the robotics is on topic.
It is a disability studies book. It's a project in that.
Okay, because we were going to focus on eating disorders, if I remember correctly, for anorexia.
Yeah, but if you want to bring in the robots, I'm always happy to talk about robots. So
You're killing me. I ran a whole separate podcast for history for kids, and I'm doing an entire year on the history of robots. So I was like... So I was like, I wonder. But I was kind of curious if the robots also links in with anorexia and a societal sort of idea of what the body type should be.
It does in a really abstract way. I link my love of robots to my history of eating disorders in the sense that I'm obsessed with automation.
Okay.
And how do you get a body to a point where it doesn't have any bodily needs? And one of my issues with anorexia, right, is also one of the reasons I had it for so long is I was obsessed with controlling my body.
Mm-hmm. So
I didn't have to rely on anyone. I wanted ultimate independence, ultimate autonomy. So coming to terms with that is also me theorizing robots as these messy, interdependent things that are more like humans.
You're hitting me with so much right now, because I always thought it was about perfectionism, and
Exactly.
Then there's also this idea about automation of I had always wanted to have the body type all my friends had of the ruler, because then you didn't even have to worry about what clothes would fit, what clothes would look inviting, I guess is the word in quotations, but
right.
It just took out all those question marks if the body didn't start going through all the curves and outwards.
Right.
No, it's so
it's
neat.
Funny because now it's to do that, the answer now is the transhumanist movement is to integrate robotics into the human body to exceed human needs, right? That's the transhuman. I don't have to rely on other people. I don't have messy bodily functions.
That's fascinating.
Totally
I'm going through my literature brain of the I forgot the name of the poem, but it was this famous poem of this idealizing of this woman until she had a bodily function, and then he was like, okay, never mind.
Every date I ever go on.
Do you have any idea how happy I am that I'm happily married? Every time I talk to my friends who go through dates, I'm like, oh, but you can't die and divorce me. Nothing. I will never go back out there again. Never.
Get to the point where I'm just oh, by the way.
But you also bring up such an interesting point, the transhumanism of people who have severe disabilities, where that ability to integrate something allows you to actually do something. My wheels allow me to move, or voice to text allows me to write. There's...
Oh, right. Absolutely. Right. And then the tension in that is able-bodied people using prosthetics to then, be more than the able human. Right. And I could imagine, especially in the disability community, people, the narratives around cure and the problems with that, people will get pretty pissed off if you're using technology to just I don't know, cure whatever mobility issues or sensory issues you have.
There's a lot of interest, like especially in the deaf community with the cochlear implants. Like, do you, don't you, do you make that decision for a child, or do you wait? Like, there's so much in that. Like,
yeah, there's a great book about that, Made to Hear.
Yeah, that was my minor in college, was deaf studies. I was hoping to be an interpreter, but my Ehlers-Danlos and risks do not coincide well with.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine.
That was definitely not my favorite. Wow, so we start off very quickly. Like robotics. You had me at robotics.
No one ever asked me about it, so I'm excited. Everyone's like, yeah, that's a weird thing that she does, but I'm not going to go there.
I feel like that's 90% of what I'm interested in, is people are like, okay, we just really need to keep Monica on a topic. Like, just get her meds and, like, keep her stable and, like, keep her from talking about robots all day would be, like, most of my sisters like, okay, so can we talk about anything else?
We might have to do a separate podcast just on robots and ableism.
I'm in. I was so in on that. You also had mentioned activism. I'm like, so I will stay on topic. I will talk to her about anorexia. And then I'm like, but robots.
There's something there.
We're going to have a lot of things to talk about. I know I don't have you for very long, so I'm going to slide all of it.
Okay, yeah.
I would kidnap you all day if I could. But, so you said that this like really started heavily, the anorexia, at 15, and I think that's actually pretty common for a lot of us who've gone through eating disorders. Was there like anything that just kind of struck you, or was it something else that really sort of like skidded in?
I think there was probably a few things. At the same time when it happened, I had just my dad had enrolled me in this very difficult private high school, all-girls Catholic school. And before that, I'd always gone to public school, and I'd always been really successful. Like, I never had to try to get A's. Like, I would just get them. And my first semester there, I just, like, flunked. I just didn't try. I didn't want to be there. It just did bad. So that triggered, like, really a long history of perfectionism, because I had disappointed my family, and my dad spent so much money. And then I just remember this day when I just woke up and I looked into the bowl, I was like taking a shower or something, and I realized like I had a body. Because I was like, I never noticed, like I have fat on my stomach now, I have hair in new places, like I had developed. And I was trying to come to terms with that. And, that was around when I was like 14, 15. I think those two things collided to me just being like, how can I take control over my own life? Like, what can I do? Because it was instilled in me at a very young age that, like, your professional life is so heavily tied to how you look. And how you look is also a strong indicator of how much you care for yourself. So, if, I go outside wearing sweatpants, that's someone that's lazy and doesn't care about their life. If I weigh 30 pounds over what I should, that's someone who's not taking care of themselves. So I was told that very, very young.
When I was reading through your questions, like you did all of your answers, and so if you're listening, just head over to our show notes. I have them all linked up with everything. But when you said taking care of a body, that hit me so strongly. Like, that's such a thing where our clothes and our body shapes can speak louder than what our words speak sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the funny thing, too, that I think the conception of anorexia is you want to be really skinny and you want to fit like a model ideal. And I really didn't care about being pretty. I just cared more about like having control over my body and not having to rely on other people for that. Like I was like, the rest of my life's going out of control. I had a lot of personal stuff going on. I was very impacted by the U.S. wars at that time, too. So I felt like the world was spiraling out of control for me, but I was like, the one thing I own, and I can't deny that I own it, is my body. So how am I gonna, how am I gonna own this? And I didn't have a lot of friends either. I was super awkward. My sexuality was all up in the air. So I think that is where it came down for me. Because I didn't, and I always say this to people, I'm like, I don't care what other people weigh or what they look like. right? I'm like, I don't care if someone, identifies as fat, and not using that in a negative term, just as a descriptor. Like, I don't care. It doesn't bother me. I'm not disgusted by it. It just literally is like my own baggage.
So how did I'm sorry if this is too personal a question, just say like nope, don't want to go there. I'll step right back. But how did sexuality enter into this? Like, was it like I'm asking because I'm a parent and I have lots of kids at that age around me, and I'm really curious how that interacted with body image. And is there anything that parents or friends or family could have done to make this, like as you're asking questions about everything at 15, is there anything that parents can do or family or anyone around can do to make life better or more easy when they're seeing these problems show up?
Yeah. I think for me, sexuality impacted it in that, I was put into this all-girls school, and I was someone who before had always hung around with the guys. So I didn't have a lot of friends. It was hard for me to make friends. But also, when you're in an all-girls school, it's like, if someone has a boyfriend, everybody knows. Everyone knows who has a boyfriend. It's, a very big deal. And likewise, everyone knows if you're a lesbian, or if you're bi, or you're queer, or whatever. It's very well known, and you are isolated if you identify as queer. Because the idea is like, when you're 14, 15, oh, that girl likes me, I can't be friends with her. So I was trying to figure out, where I fit in that. Now I identify as bisexual. So at the time I was like hanging out with the queer kids, but I was also like trying to just, have friends. And it really weighed heavily on me because I saw everybody, linking up and getting a partner. And the people that did, date someone, whether it was a boy or a girl or someone else, were all the people that fit like a normal kind of standard of beauty. And that was really hard for me at the time. Because I know that my parents looked at me like, I don't get it. Amy's so like funny and smart. Why doesn't she date anyone? What's wrong with her? That was kind of narrative. So for me, I was also trying to figure out like, okay, is my sexuality somehow impeding my success? Is it getting in the way of things? So for a very long time, I just didn't get close to anyone. Because I also saw getting close to other people as kind of an interruption, as something that would disrupt my perfectionism.
Wow, that's that is fascinating.
Right? Yeah.
So how
can your question, right?
Yeah.
Like, what can I do as a parent
or as a friend? Like, I remember, like when I was going through this in Catholic school as well as a teenager, like friends were trying to figure out like how do I support this person without like betraying them. Like, instead of going to a counselor or, like, going to the person's parents, or maybe that's the way to do it. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on, like, how can the community come together to help someone?
Yeah. I think my friends did end up going. They went to the school nurse and they went to the counselor. And I just flat out lied to the counselor and the school nurse and said I was fine, right? And it ended up that my friends, like, and I don't blame them for this, they just couldn't, like, they didn't know what to do. I was also very moody. I was extremely mean. I was not pleasant to be around, right? Because I wasn't eating. Shocking. I had
Funny.
So I don't blame them. And they just kind of, slowly I isolated myself and they moved away from me. And I think, honestly, what would have helped so much is just having someone who wouldn't go away. And who was a little more persistent. And, even my own parents, I love them to death, but they didn't understand what was going on fully. So they wanted to give me privacy, so they didn't intervene. And my suggestion always to parents and friends is like, just show that you're still going to be there, no matter what happens for that person. Because then when I did get to the point of recovery and I got to a stable weight, I wanted my friends back, and that was never going to happen. And it was just like I had to start high school all over again.
So because recovery for eating disorders is, when I was going through it, the counselor said that it was like being like, it's almost like alcoholic, but you can't just stop food. So you're never like at a point where it's not in your head somewhere. It's always like a program running in the back of your head. Is that similar for you? And how do you work with with that throughout your adult life now, where food is such like a huge part of our culture, from dating to friends to work events.
Yeah, I think you brought up an important distinction, right? Like, I think that comparison between alcoholism and eating disorders is really powerful, because even today, if you ask, I'll just say I'm living with eating disorders. Like, I don't think I'll ever get rid of it, and I never actually went into any formal recovery because I didn't have the means to do so. I didn't have the money. I didn't want to tell my parents. I didn't know how to get onto the insurance and stuff. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of just like, I just ate a lot and put on a lot of weight. Like, I was like, I just need to gain back weight, so I just ate a lot of like meal bars for like months, and tried to, Google everything on the internet. So to get to your question too, it's like, how do we navigate this? For me, it's a lot of planning. It's a lot of thinking ahead as to like, okay, what does my day look like? What does my week look like? When are situations are going to come up when I am going to eat, or I'm in a situation with food, or when I need to show my body in a way, is that going to be uncomfortable? What can I do to plan ahead, look at menus, stuff like that? And honestly, like, the biggest thing that has helped me is just like having friends who understand it, who understand like, okay, Amy knows what she's doing. I trust her. We're not going to intervene or try to force her to do anything that makes her uncomfortable. It's like a special kind of access, right? Because if I was at a point with my eating disorder where I was starving myself, then I'd want someone to intervene, right? I wouldn't want you to be accessible. Please, just, break this cycle of comfort that I have of not eating. But in a situation where I'm at now, where I'm much more stable, I need people to kind of trust that I know what I'm doing and not intervene. And that is how access kind of has changed for me, through the progression of eating disorders. And been times where you have relapses and you come back, and it's like an unstable process, but I've been pretty stable for about 5 years now.
So how do you ask for help? Like, it sounds like you also have the, so sorry, my brain is scrambled from painkillers at the moment, but,
been there. Yes.
Oh God. Wow, just trying to human right now is a struggle.
Yeah.
But I did not want to reschedule. I know how busy you are. But how are you able to ask for what you need? I was reading through some of the things you were saying, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm guilty of some of this stuff. I've got to rethink how I talk to some of my friends. How are you able to like ask, like, hey, I know you're dealing with your own body issues and stuff, but can you lay off of me on that?
Yeah. Usually I'm pretty honest about it. Let me think here, because you have to find a balance between like being honest and not like forcing yourself to disclose a lot of information when you don't want to, right? So an example of this would be, if my friends are, saying something that I think is kind of food phobic or fat phobic, or sharing a lot of diet tips or something like that, I'll honestly, they usually don't, but I've been in situations, right? And I'll honestly just say something and be like, hi, I don't know if you know, but those languages, that language and those tips can actually be really triggering for people with eating disorders, among other disorders. Like, you might just want to watch your language or provide content warnings. So that allows me to not center myself there, but I also want to acknowledge, like, there's other people in those spaces and maybe they're not talking out. Or a lot of times, I'll try not to disrupt other people's plans. So if everyone is going to a big dinner and maybe there's nothing for me at the restaurant, I'll either ask can we change the restaurant? Or I'll just say something like, I can meet you after, or I can meet you before, or whatever. So I've tried to be flexible without losing my access needs, while also not, making other people change their plans. Because they might also have access needs to why they're going to a certain place, and I try not to cause any tension there.
There's a lot of trying not to cause tensions that I'm trying to work on this year. Like, trying to cause more tensions is my point to that. I feel like I do too much of the trying not to make waves and not asking for what, like, the needs that you're talking about are so similar to, like, needs that those of us who have wheelchairs, like, are like, okay, maybe I'll meet you at a place that doesn't have stairs later, or, you know, diabetics or people who have, like, other eating questions and issues and things to, like, meet other places. Like, that's really interesting. Like, when I was, after I just had a baby, there was, when you would meet new, like, at least for my personal experience, when we do the new mom groups, the first freaking discussion was always, how do you get your body back? It's like, are you serious? Like, I'm just trying to stay alive right now for the first 3 months. Like, it was such a weird, like, that's a bonding thing that we're all going to, like, that all of us are thinking about right now. Like, it just seemed like almost like a precursor of, like, this is how we say, hi, my name is, my baby is, and how did you get to, like, it was such a weird trigger, like, after everything changed again.
That is, and that reminds me too of, like, I'm also in a PhD program. I'm in graduate school, and my first semester I did have a bit of a relapse to my eating disorder because I was just under so much stress. But also, one thing they pushed so much us in graduate school is, like, they were like, well, you have to be really successful and do all your work, but you also need to stay healthy and stay in shape. So you better exercise, and you better watch your diet, and you better not drink too much, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I know you're trying to care for me, but I'm so tired from all this graduate work, and all I want to do is just go sleep on my couch and not move for 10 hours. Like, can I do that without feeling lazy or wasteful? So my first semester, I went, like, gung-ho, and I started running again, and I don't need to run. I do not need to lose weight. Like, I need no exercise. I walk enough. It's fine. And I was put in a lot of, like, difficult social and professional situations where it was like, okay, we're going to do this, academic workshop. We're going to have a working lunch too. And, then we're going to do this social thing after, and everyone's going to go out. And it was just like, there was just no consideration of, like, what if someone can't do this or doesn't want to do this? So I toughened up, and I was like, I'm just going to stick it through and do all these terrible events. And I did, and I was miserable. It didn't make me any happier. And my second semester, I learned to say no, or just learned to say things like, hey, did you think that maybe you shouldn't order pizza for every single professional workshop? Like, you think that might be a problem?
You're making me miss and not miss graduate school all at once right now.
Yeah. It's been a long one. Right. But, like, they did start to listen. Like, the more vocal I was, the more they were like, oh, yeah, maybe this is a bad idea. So,
go beyond the first thought.
Yeah, exactly.
So you made another mention that really hit me hard, because I'm always wondering if, like, how closely related eating disorders and self-harm are. Because I find, like, at least for my own personal experience, they went right hand in hand with cutting and other things. And, like, it's amazing how it can just, like, come back up. It's kind of almost like grieving to me. Like, I think I'm, like, through the biggest wave of it, and then there's, like, another little sneaker wave that will come up, and it's like, it's the same sort of thing on which one I have to fight against, is, like, the self-harm, the eating, and how closely related that is. And part of the shame of, like, going towards, like, getting help for it is that you're too smart for this. And when you said that, I, like, wanted to underline it 20 times. Can you talk about because it also goes with, like, why women and men and anyone who is experiencing this, please, everyone forgive me for my circular talking. If you knew what a walking opioid crisis I am right now, you all would understand how hard it's to form a sentence. So please forgive me today. Oh, I'm trying so hard. It's kind of pitiful right now, but I am working on it. About for people even asking for help in domestic violence situations or violent situations, is you're too smart to be that person who's in that. And I feel like it's very similar in the eating disorders, in the self-harm things. Can you tell me more about, like, what you meant by, like, when you said that? Is that just hit so close to home?
Yeah. I think this is a hard stigma, and the comment you're referring to was something someone had said to me And this was a point in my life when I started college, and I started identifying as a feminist, and I started doing gender studies, and I was very, like, politically minded and very vocal about my views. And, at that point I had gotten my grades up, and I was just known as, like, someone who was just, like, very intelligent. I was, planning to get a PhD, all this stuff. And I was at work one night, and I just made a comment to somebody who was talking about eating disorders, and I said something like, I had eating disorders for years, like, it's still something I deal with. And he turned to me and he said, I can't believe you would be that stupid. And it was amazing to me. This is someone who I also considered to be intelligent and who worked in health medicine. And it was amazing, comment to me. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to process that over here. But I think it fits with the stereotype of eating disorders as, like, I would say, like, 15 to 16-year-old, like, white girls who just, like, watch too much, like, Beverly Hills 90210 and now don't eat. And that's their reason, like, they want to look like somebody, right? And I'm like, it's so much more complex than that, and there's so much more that goes on. And for me, it's like that idea of being too smart went hand in hand with my eating disorder. I was trying to be perfect, and I had this idea of what perfection was, and my intelligence went correlated with that. Because I also looked at, well, the times when I had, and this is true, the times when I had eating disorders very badly were also the times when I succeeded the most academically. Because I had no distractions, I had no friends. I would just sit around and read all day because I didn't do anything else. So that was, like, a really big trigger for me. So even now when I do really well academically, I'm like, okay, I gotta check myself. How am I doing on the other side of things? And for me, that absolutely was a form of self-harm. It wasn't cutting to that degree, or anything we traditionally think of as self-harm, but I was purposely isolating myself, and purposely saying things like, I enjoy this, but I don't deserve it. I'm not going to go out with my friends. I'm not going to go out and do this. I don't deserve it. I haven't earned it. And it was, one of those things where, eating, not enough or something was almost like I deserved a reward. Like, oh, I did so good today. I haven't eaten for 6 hours. That's great. And that was my mentality for so long.
I think there's so many people who just went, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that. I mean, even our advertising specifically highlights that you worked really hard today. You deserve a beer. You worked really hard. You deserve this cupcake. Like, you were good, so you deserve a cheat day. Seems to be the new little underline. Mm-hmm. Like, wow, that's hard hitting.
Right? Yeah, but I would never reward myself with food. Like, never. Like, I removed that from the equation. It was, like, something else. Usually, like, buying something. Like, I was really good today. I'm gonna, like, buy more clothes that are, like, super tight and show off my bones. Like, that was
sexy clavicle right here.
That's really what I would do.
Wow. Yep.
It is. And like you said, it's very hard, because then if I do, come out, so to speak, and tell somebody this, the response was like, why would you ever do that? You know so much about health medicine. You do disability studies. You're a feminist. Why would you do all these things that seem anti-feminist, anti-disability, blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, I didn't choose to do these things. This is a chronic illness. Right?
That's an important point there. Impairment. You just made one of the most important points of it's not a choice. And that's one of the biggest issues with eating disorders is that people are like, well, you could just stop this.
Have you ever thought of eating? You could just eat.
Yeah, and then this would be all done. It's not like another kind of disability or disorder. You have the control there, and that goes more towards the shame thing again of getting help.
Yeah. Exactly. And all the forms it takes, too.
Yes.
It's not like when I say eating disorders, everyone thinks starvation. I'm like, it's also overeating. It's also only eating one thing. It's also, you see the cases now of, like, extreme bodybuilding, where people are pushing their bodies to these limits and, not eating solid food. And there's a very fine line now between, like, when does a diet become an eating disorder?
Especially with the new fast, like if you all are doing fasting and you're under doctor's supervision, that's your thing. Like, ignore me on this, but I will just say that I have concerns when I'm watching a whole bunch of my friends be like, I'm only going to drink juice and I'm only going to eat 3 days a week, and that just like instantly just starts like, I get concerned. It seems a little close to what I was dealing with.
That is a big concern. It's part of like the detox movement. Or like you see these weight loss teas, and I'm like, it's not a weight loss tea. It just makes you shit out everything.
Can we just say yay for Jamila? Oh gosh, brain is on stop. The Good Place, Tahani, help me. But wow,
from the Good Place.
Her work on like trying to keep these diet teas, diet lollipops out of the visual of my daughter's age. Like, I'm so grateful for that. Like, there was no stop on the 17 magazines when I was growing up where they'd be like, this is a 5'7" model who weighs 105 pounds. And I'm like, oh my God, I must be a beast. Like, it was one of the worst things ever to like put in front of people.
Yeah. Right. It's also the changing of the terms things where I'm like, a laxative is something you take every day. I'm like, that is a form of eating disorder.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Like, it's something you take when you need it. And, you know, selling these teas as a weight loss product or just, like, you know, like, that's, you know, any doctor will tell you, like, that is an addiction. And it, you know, the short and long-term health effects of eating disorders are so unknown and also dire.
Yes. Yes.
Like, I have disabilities from those side effects. Like, it just made me more disabled. Like,
you know, I'd love to see more studies on that, on what long-term early anorexia and bulimia does to a body over time. That would be fascinating to see. We've touched on perfectionism a whole bunch, and I keep seeing like people discussing perfectionism as oh God, I missed my brain. The basic idea is perfectionism as safety. So if you could be perfect, you're safe. And I just started thinking about that from my own side of things, of having like super, my body type is basically Jessica Rabbit. There was nothing I could do about it, and it was early. So I would walk into a room back when, what was that horrible song? I like the Big Butts song, back in the 90s. Sir Mix-a-Lot. Thank you. So every time I'd walk into a room, some of the boys would start that song. So it's like, if I was skinny, I wouldn't get that. Like, that was my mindset. Like, if I could just be perfect body, I wouldn't be public property. If I was just perfect and smart, I wouldn't ever starve to death on the streets, as my parents kept telling me I would do if I didn't get good grades. Like, it was just like, perfect keeps you safe. Like, how do you feel about all that? Like, word vomit I just went through.
I absolutely agree with that idea of like a perfect body will keep you safe. And I'll explain also how that backfired on me. But I think my idea of a perfect body would keep me safe is it would safe from like having to rely on other people. Like, I really didn't trust many people. I also grew up in a police and military family, so I was kind of raised to just be paranoid of everyone all the time.
Oh.
So I didn't trust anyone. And for me, it was like the safety of having control of my own body and also having a certain body type definitely fit in with me being, like I said, totally independent, totally autonomous. And that's what I was like working towards professionally too. Like, I was in 9th grade and I was like, I'm going to get a PhD and I'm going to get an academic job and I'm going to be really successful. And that was my plan, and I did not stop working towards that. And that was my safety. It was like, you know, safety and having a future. At the same time, when I was watching things like, you know, Wall Street crash, and I'm watching, you know, my friends around me, you know, fail and get hurt, and so many things that were like instilling fear on me. Like, I don't want that. I never want to be that.
I just realized what generation you're in, and I'm like, I definitely am understanding this now. I get exactly what years you were growing up, and wow. That would have definitely been something to just be hitting 18, 19 with all that happening.
Yeah, it was a lot. And like I said, it was also a time when I'm getting politically and socially minded. So I'm starting to realize maybe the United States isn't the best country in the world. And I, you know, coming to terms with that and, coming to terms with not being religious in a Catholic school. So there's some things that were, like, I took as threats to me that I wanted to kind of protect myself from. And now the downside of this is now I am very small. I can't gain a lot of weight. I don't have a lot of muscle, and that makes me actually less safe and more of a target to predators. And that's just, the truth of it. I also look a lot younger than I am. I'm 26, and I get mistaken for, I'm not joking, 12 years old at the airport.
Oh, that's horrible.
12 years old at the airport. And I just keep thinking, I'm like, what if someday some predator sees me and, they think I'm underage or they think I'm, someone else or whatever. And I have been the victim of a lot of harassment, a lot of sexual harassment. And it's just something that's always in my mind of like, and this gets back to the guilt. I'm like, well, if I wasn't anorexic, would I have a normal body and would I suffer this kind of abuse? Would I be so scared? So it goes back to the shame thing, right? Yeah. Where I'm like, oh, I did this to myself. I'm putting myself now in more harm.
I just want to underline that because we're now getting into the sexual assault and sexual abuse and eating disorders, and I find that that has gone hand in hand for myself and a lot of people I know, because we're also getting back to the shame. Did I make that happen? Am I responsible for this? Like, I just don't think that those two separate out easily.
Yeah, it is. It's the very scary thing of, right, like, yeah, did I do this to myself? And also thinking of sexual assault as like this just really pervasive attack on bodily autonomy, which is something, obviously I was obsessed with. Mm-hmm. And even today, it's like, messed with my ideas of intimacy and becoming intimate in so many ways. Because I do need to like be intimate with someone in any way. It's like I do need to make my body vulnerable. And that is a very scary thing, because it also forces me to look at my body. It forces someone else to look at my body, and to, like, this kind of radical trust of like, okay, I'm really going to hope that you aren't going to hurt me here. I'm really going to hope that you aren't going to break me, because I'm so little that someone could literally break me with one hand, and that is a fact.
With sex, it's like you lose sex, intimacy, all that physical, like one-on-one or more or whatever consensual world we're discussing. You don't get control of the narrative anymore. Like, if you're in front of someone, you don't get to control which angles you're being seen at, or like it. Right. And exactly what's happening, the narrative changes. Also, when you're talking about the sexual assault, I just wanted to be clear. I'm not even just discussing like rape, molestation. I'm discussing like anyone walking down the street, and then all of a sudden there's a whole barrage of words thrown at you as catcalls, which, please, if you ever have listening to this and you've ever thought about doing this, please don't. Just don't. It's terrifying, it's threatening, and all it does is it makes people feel unsafe in the space they're in. It's not acceptable. And that's, I don't know if you've seen the show, but Sex Education on Netflix has become my entire jam. And like the season 2, I'm not going to spoil anything, but they really touched on that subject in the most amazing way. And it's just, I'm trying to debate how old my kids need to be before they see that show, but it's really fantastic.
It is, yeah. And you raise a really good point there too about thinking about, maybe not immediately physical forms of sexual abuse and sexual violence that kind of pertain to us and affect us in so many ways. It's like when people say things like, I'm a sexual abuse survivor, the narrative behind that or the assumption is always like, oh, they've been raped. And as you point out, it's like we need to have a more capacious understanding of those things, and that'll also help us break down and understand how things like words and representation have immense cognitive and physical effects in the long run.
So I know I cannot kidnap you all day, and I seriously would, but you had wanted to discuss the pro-ANA movement, which is definitely before my time, so I don't know what that is.
Oh, okay. Yeah, pro-ANA, which stands for pro-anorexia, is primarily online groups, online websites, and these are usually younger women, like under 20, who go onto these websites and they have communities together and they encourage and motivate each other's eating disorders. So they'll share things like diet tips, they'll share things like recipes, they'll share how to starve yourself for, weeks and weeks on end. And I was never like on these websites in these circles, but I discovered them later, and I find them fascinating in the sense that, of course, it's so sad, but my question is always like, how do we intervene in these groups, and how do we make sense of these pro-ana communities within the disability community? Because these are people who are experiencing what I would identify as a form of mental illness, but their mental illness is manifesting in a way that makes them also extremely triggering to other people, encourages self-harm, also usually very fat-phobic. So it's like a very, in some ways destructive set of communities. And I'm like, well, how do we make sense of them within the disability community that believes in completely different things? Seems to be in totally opposition to pro-ana.
So what do you think? How could that? It is a group that has rounded up a bunch of people who need help. How can we use that for help, or is there a way to?
Yeah, the communities are very interesting because when you look at them, most of them will say things like, "Yeah, I know I need help, but I can't." And right now, I think usually in the groups, what those people want is to just not feel alone. Like they've been so isolated by everyone in their lives, they just want someone who understands what it's like to live with anorexia or live with an eating disorder. So they serve an important purpose. And I think as someone who is now outside of those communities, but also like still very interested in intervening with them, I've been thinking about how might we think of disability as, if I call those people disabled, they might get offended, they might be confused, they wouldn't understand fully. And I don't want to just call other people disabled, that doesn't work. But thinking about disability as an affiliation or showing a form of allyship that can connect with them in a way, because I do think it's a form of mental illness, and mental illness can manifest in ways that can be unfortunately harmful to other people. Usually not. I don't mean to perpetuate the stereotype of mental illness as violence. But if you think of things like addiction or alcoholism, like those things can be triggering to other people. So it's a question I'm still working through, but it's something I like to make people aware of just saying like, there are sites of disability out there that are not readily visible, or sites of chronic illness that don't identify as such. And I think we need to protect and stand up for their rights as much as we do for ours.
Yeah, it's such a different, at least from what I remember and how I felt was like, leave me alone, where now I feel like, oh, please help me. Like, if you all know a way that I can move through the world as a disabled person with my wheelchair, please come over and help me. And when I was in the throes of anorexia, the last thing I wanted was I was very angry and bitey at that time.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to reach out and how that would work, but I'm really curious on, it seems like an opportunity to help with something if you have everyone there, but I don't know how that reach out would work.
It's very hard, and what I don't like is there's been many, I know in Italy at least, Italy was talking about totally banning these communities, just running the websites, and I'm like, that doesn't seem like the best way. There's a lot of talk about just censoring them, and I don't think shutting them out and not giving them a space to speak is going to be helpful at all.
That's interesting.
Yeah, like it would be a way of invalidating their experience.
Or just no chance to, or more isolating. That's what I always fear for people, is that the isolation and shame is usually the most painful part, at least. Or yeah, that's a very interesting question.
It is, yeah, because it is a space too where they might not actually feel shame. If you've had an eating disorder, you know what it's like, where you want to eat and you I don't want anyone to see me eat because it's weird. And this is the community where they can actually share all their habits without feeling that way, and they also share things that are going on with their bodies. Like, hey, I woke up and I had this feeling in my stomach. Does anyone know what it is? I've never had this before. How do I work through it? I can't go to the doctors. So there's a lot of help going on in them. They're very complex. They're just very interesting, and it's I always say they're harder to find now. Many have been censored off the internet. It is something you need a lot of content warnings to if you wanted to look at or visit.
Yeah, I would definitely say that
Yeah,
that's a big like asterisk here of like don't if you're
yeah,
on any fences like
yeah,
but it would just be interesting if like instead of the banning and I'm totally talking out of my tail right now because I do not have a degree in this at all, but just having help numbers that go up on the top, if
yeah,
like anonymous help numbers that could go up on the top of these communities for them to exist. I have no idea. I'm just saying isolating
right,
people further is almost never the answer, and banning things I think we've
yeah.
historically seen is really problematic.
Or just welcoming them to another community. I'm like,
Mm,
what if there was like an intermediate community that wasn't totally pro Anna, but wasn't totally forcing them into recovery?
that's such
You know,
an
a space,
interesting point. It's like
you
with
know,
most of what we're talking about power being taken away from someone, not feeling safe in a space, not feeling safe in a body.
yeah,
So instead of saying, "Hey,
right.
you're doing this now or else," but giving you make a really good point of the intermediary space.
Yeah, like some kind of recovery that is enforced. And this is also, I don't know what your experience was with eating disorder recovery. It's often like, you're going to eat these foods every day at these times. You're going to do these things. You're not going to do these things. And I'm like, oh, now I feel like a child. Now I feel like I have no power whatsoever. So thank you very much for that. And that's one reason I could not do it.
If you want to come back on another time and talk about the infantilizing of disability, please come back on. I would love to have that discussion of like not just with the eating disorders, but just how childlike you get treated in the disability world
And the
by
gender
others.
dynamics of that.
Sorry?
Yeah. The gender dynamics, of course, of that. And then the gender dynamic. I also have a chronic pain condition, so whenever you tell someone that, it's always like, "Oh, poor baby." And I'm like, gross.
Yeah, I prefer badass. I'll take badass any day over poor baby. That'd be great.
Yeah, anything. Say anything.
Yeah,
like a horrible person first. Just please don't call me a baby.
Yeah, right. Like I'll go with bitch before I get called baby. Like
honestly,
totally fine with bitch. Bitch just kind of means that I refuse to conform to what you need me to be versus what I need to be. So I'm good with bitch. But
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
let's do that. Yeah, let's plan that.
That would be wonderful. Well, I know you have something you have to do in like 10 minutes, so I am going to let you go, but thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this was really exciting. Really got to talk through this with you. And also, like, I was a little nervous, and this was way more comfortable than I thought it was going to be.
Oh, I'm really glad to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's just very easy to talk to as well.
I appreciate that. I'm even better when not heavily medicated, I promise. But
don't worry about it. I know what that's like.
Oh, gosh, I'm sure you do.
Yeah. And we will follow up. I think we have more collaborations to do.
We have so much to talk about. All right, well, everyone, thank you so much for listening. Please head over to our show notes. I will have all of the free toll-free numbers to call if you have listened to this and you overestimated your trigger warning ability and this was triggering anyway. I will absolutely have help numbers and text numbers as well, so that if you have social anxiety about talking on the phone, I will have numbers up that you can just text and talk to someone that way. I certainly overestimated my trigger abilities before, so I am right there with you all. Thank you so much, everyone. Until next week, be kind, be gentle, and wow, if you've been reading the newspapers, be a badass, please. Absolutely, in whatever way you can be.